happy today to be here with you guys to be speaking about a topic that is very close to our hearts, and that is circular economy. So we just saw some very amazing startup speech here today, and I'm very curious to know, people in the room, how many of you do recycling? Recycling, reusing? Okay, that's a very small number. Okay, nobody practices recycling. If you're Kenyan, you definitely do recycling. You know, we wear mitumba clothes, so that's recycling. Please raise your hands if you do recycling. Okay, wonderful, thank you. So we saw some very amazing startups today, Peach, and I'm curious to know, Kristen, from your experience working with SMEs and startups, could you mention one of your favorite startups that you have seen able to transform waste into a high valuable product? And while you're at that, please do mention any challenges that you've seen them face while they're trying to scale their solutions.
Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, so I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Christine Babu. I work for Kenya Climate Innovation Center. We are a Pan-African organization in 6 countries, in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ghana, and Nigeria. And we address the climate change challenge at the intersection of innovation and entrepreneurship. So we support entrepreneurs who provide climate solutions. So far, we've supported over 3,500 entrepreneurs. And one, it's very difficult to just mention one, Melanie, so you'll allow me maybe to mention 3. So number 1 is... Just one, okay. All right, so there is green pencils. Green pencils, they use old cartons, old papers, old newspapers to make green pencils. So I had that product here I wanted to show you guys, but I think I don't seem to find it, but the innovation is simple, a green pencil, so it saves at least 1 tree. And at the bottom of the pencil, they have interconnected it to seedlings, so they have various types of seedlings like spinach, name them. So when the pencil is used up, you can then plant those seedlings wherever you are. And then a second one, which is the last, Melanie. How many in this room would use briquettes made from human waste to cook? If you're assured it's clean, it's safe and sustainable? Let me see by a show of hands. Yeah, so that is another innovation that we support at Kenya Climate Innovation Center. They are called NAWASCO. They make briquettes from human waste. And that keeps me thinking, if we can use human waste to make briquettes, then what other resources are we not utilizing and just calling them waste? Yeah.
And any challenges that they've faced when they're trying to scale their solutions?
Yes, definitely. So the waste management sector is overregulated, especially in the context of Kenya. For a wastepreneur, on average, they will need like 5 to 12 licenses, depending with which waste value chain they are in. So that becomes very expensive. And the overregulation looks like this. You need a transport license, and then you will need to get that from the county government. You'll need to get the same license from NEMA, which is the National Environment Management Authority. And then, for example, if you have a site where you're doing plastic recycling, you have organic waste, you have any other type of waste, you have to pay a license for each waste value chain. So then that becomes extremely expensive. The second one is the waste ecosystem is very capital intensive. So we are encouraging these innovators to add value to waste. And for you to add value to any waste, you require equipment, for example. So without supportive financing, then they are not able to innovate. They are not able to add value to waste. And to add into the complexity, especially when we have the hard to recycle waste like diapers, then that makes innovation, again, very expensive.
Claire, as an entrepreneur yourself, could you tell us a little bit about Farm to Feed and also any of the challenges that you faced along the way when you've been trying to scale your circular economy solution? And while at that, could you also describe your experience with sourcing raw materials? Because I do know sourcing, when we talk about recycling, we're talking about using tangible products. How hard is it to access it? And when it comes to affordability, how do you balance, accessing your products and also affordability and making sure that your product is not cheaper but affordable to your markets?
Yeah. So to explain what Farm to Feed does, I'll take you to the problem. So half of fruits and vegetables in sub-Saharan Africa does not reach the consumer, half. So the food system in sub-Saharan Africa is extremely wasteful because of all the inefficiencies in the supply chain. So about 15 to 20% is wasted on farm level, and then it goes all the way through the supply chain, meaning there's an incredible loss of income. People putting capital in the ground are not able to sell the full harvest. It means that people across the supply chain are working and unable to sell part of what they've bought. So Kenya alone loses 1.5 billion USD annually due to post-harvest losses. Secondly, climate change, 10% of greenhouse gas emissions globally comes from food waste and food loss. And then lastly, of course, the paradox is 1 out of 3 Kenyans faces poor nutrition and food insecurity. So Farm to Feed, at its core, aggregates the full harvest from farms, one that includes imperfect and surplus produce, meaning that everything that the farmer initially would find difficult to sell, we buy, meaning that they get an income, and we're able to sell that to our customers, B2B. So hotels, restaurants, Shamba is one of our customers, at a lower price. So it's more affordable, actually, the way we do it. We're now starting to add value to our products. So a broken carrot, if you peel it, it becomes a high-value product, as one example, and we're doing that more and more with value chains, where we see, using the djembe to harvest potatoes means you'll get a lot of slash potatoes. If you peel your potatoes, then no one sees it was the slash potatoes. So those kind of solutions we're now introducing, and we're introducing more and more manufacturing with co-manufacturing partners. Now, there are a lot of barriers to scale. One is, not everyone will buy a broken carrot. So I think one of the lessons for us, which was really important, is we came with this problem that we found really important, but it doesn't mean that your end consumer finds this their most important problem. They don't care so much about the broken carrot as I do. So I needed to make my service in a way that they will that is a product market fit, and that is not just about the broken carrot. It's about their food system, it's about convenience, it's about a one-stop shop. So so that's one lesson that we've learned and challenge that we faced, and we made us pivot. Another one is raw materials. It's seasonal, and I think at times, people say greenwashing sometimes is like, oh, your product has to be made from pure upcycled product. I think it's great if we can, integrate 20% or 50% or 60% in a product of upcycled products. And if that's your pathway to scale, that's great. So raw materials is seasonal in agriculture. Yeah.
Do we have any circular economy startup in the audience? Yes. Can someone give him a mic? I'd like to know from your experience, when you are looking for raw materials, have you faced any challenges? How do you navigate it? And you can also tell us what your startup does.
Hi. I'm happy to see Claire on the stage. We've never met, but we talk quite often. I come from Close the Gap, Kenya, and we offer affordable refurbished ICT products.
We use your laptops.
Yeah, circular in this sense. Challenges with sourcing for materials. I'd say locally, the standards are a bit low for us. So that and also the culture locally. So we do something quite similar to Sikili, but now for the whole range of IT products. And you find that in Kenya, we also have the culture where we use our devices until they're no more. So that contributes to the difficulty of us sourcing for local products. We also have a challenge with most organizations.
So where do you get your products? Do you import?
We do a mix. So we have a mix of imports and locals, but at the moment, I think imports are quite high as compared to what we get locally. We're trying to change organizations' perspectives into now using devices for, say, like 1 or 2 years, then passing them down for refurbishing, and this can then be used by disadvantaged or marginalized people.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Their laptops are really good. I would recommend everyone buying their laptop.
Wow. Okay, you guys have heard that, right? Go and see him if you need a new laptop. So circular economy is growing in a lot of sectors in Africa, and we're seeing one of the sectors is manufacturing. And we're kind of seeing, like, right now, a lot of, manufacturing businesses or corporates are kind of being forced to follow the EPR regulations, that is Extended Producer Responsibility Regulations. And I'm curious, Daniel, if you have had any experience with, when you look at the models that some of these manufacturers are adopting, do you feel like there's any model that is working for them? And how do you think manufacturers can work with startups when it comes to trying to navigate circular economy?
Sure, thank you. Can everyone hear me at the back? Cool, okay. So I think in terms of models that have worked, the kind of outstanding one of these, it was interesting when earlier you asked if people recycle and not everyone put their hands up. Because if you use glass bottles ever, you recycle, right? And so if you look at models that have really, really worked, that pretty much across the continent at huge scale has been super effective. Highly fragmented, highly decentralized, but very, very effective. And so, looking at models that have potential to scale and to work across all different sectors, I would look at that kind of as the first one. Begin with that. Look at the things that have really worked there. Look at the adaptations that would need to be made to whatever the peculiarity is of that sector, and go from there.
What about you, Claire? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with manufacturers?
Yeah, I mean, working with manufacturers is not easy in the sense you're working with a different company who has different values, different goals, different problems they're solving. So we've onboarded manufacturers that are making products for us. It seems like a very easy step process. Once you say, okay, we both want this, but then there's about 30 steps before your product is actually ready, product market fit, what you want according to spec. So collaborating with other companies come with huge back and forths and time and steps and feedback. And they might have other priorities, other products. This might be your most important product. For them, this is like their side product because they're trying to use their idle space. So yeah, it brings huge challenges, but huge opportunities because I also strongly believe that we should not be making everything ourselves. So I strongly believe in working with co-manufacturing partners. It's an easier way to scale. There's a lot of manufacturing capability in Kenya that are looking for markets. So I do think we should all find more of those partnerships. But it doesn't mean it's an easy route.
I'm a circular economy startup. I'm starting up, just in my early phases. How would you advise me to approach a manufacturer like Coca-Cola, Pepsi?
I would not go to those guys. That's one. I would do a mapping of the manufacturers in Kenya we're in food, so we look at manufacturers that do certain value chains that are very seasonal. So for example, we're talking to a manufacturer that can do avocado, and we know that that's in particular season, that might be off season with a mango. season, for example. So they would have idle space. And there's, yeah, so I would look at it like that. The smaller that are scaling
You would
up.
advise them to start off with small manufacturers over larger manufacturers, correct?
Yes, because
Okay.
they are looking to grow and they're looking for more customers. That's really important. And they probably don't have year-round, their mission is to have year-round manufacturing, and they probably don't because it's very difficult to do year-round because your customers are probably seasonal, your inputs are seasonal. So finding those gaps and making sure you streamline your operations and your demand.
Okay, thank you. Yesterday, during the Africa Arena Summit, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I don't know if he's in the audience, but he was telling me how important it is to have government and policymakers in such spaces when we're talking about such integral issues. And in Africa, we've seen that we have the Africa Circular Economy Alliance that was started off a few years ago with Rwanda, Nigeria, and South Africa. In Kenya, we have the Kenya Sustainable Waste Management Act. And I'm curious, Christine, could you tell us a little bit about this act? Because I'm pretty sure maybe some of us are not aware that we have such an act. And what are some of the incentives it offers? What are some of the gaps it offers? What are some of the opportunities that are there? And have we started implementing the act itself?
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. So the Sustainable Waste Management Act of Kenya, we have seen the entrepreneurs that we are currently supporting tapping into some of the opportunities that are presented in this act. For example, the models starting from segregation, I have seen entrepreneurs already who are selling the bin liners, the different color-coded bins. Some are doing consultancies along, educating the public on the different change behaviors. I've also seen transportation of waste models, recycling, composting, and some of these models are what the Sustainable Waste Management Act is really emphasizing because of the component of adding value to waste. And then the component on what is the role of especially the county government in all these. One of the aspects is all the county governments are expected to establish a material recovery facility in every county. And an example in Kenya of one of the counties in Kisumu, they have already established 6 material recovery facilities. And what they did is they floated a tender open to the public, to wastepreneurs, and asking them, can you bid? And the most qualified, the most compliant, then can run this material recovery facility. And one of the entrepreneurs we actually support at Kenya Climate Innovation Center was able to get that opportunity because they were fully compliant and they are currently running the material recovery facility. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is the Sustainable Waste Management Act is real, and the opportunities, the entrepreneurs are already tapping into those opportunities already. Looking at the gaps, I will talk about compliance promotion. So the Act really emphasizes on all the wastepreneurs, they need to be heavily compliant in terms of having all the licenses. But the biggest bottleneck is the environmental officers at the county level. They don't have the technical know-how in terms of guiding the wastepreneurs in matters compliance. So the gap here, or rather what needs to be done, the recommendation is they need to be trained to close this gap so that then when an entrepreneur approaches an environmental officer, they are able to answer all the questions pertaining compliance now that it's a very big thing in the Act. Secondly is on domestication of the Act. There's the national framework, which is now the Sustainable Waste Management Act. The framework is already there nationally, but we need to go a step further to now domesticate this policy at the county level so that the policy is more practical, it's more inclusive. However, that needs technical capacity, it needs finances, and I think that was not thought through because most of the counties are trying to domesticate these policies, but very few have already done that, so it might take a lot more time.
You say that very soon we're going to start doing color-coded bins. Is that correct? Do you think that is something that Kenyans will adopt, or will we need to do a lot of awareness campaigns?
Yeah, definitely. The awareness campaigns have already started, actually. I think everyone knows, the narrative on segregation at source, and that needs color-coded bins. However, we need to do more than that. The missing link is the infrastructure. Where are those bins? Because then the public then needs to buy these bins, but there is no clear incentive on why are we then buying these bins. So if the government could provide the bins, then it makes the whole
It might work.
easier.
It might work.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to a very interesting topic, and that is money. You know, everybody is always talking about money, and we have our money guy here, Dan. From your perspective as a VC, do you think that circular economy solutions face a perception barrier when it comes to investments? I'm pretty sure you've had a lot of experience with startups coming to pitch to you. Do you all feel like there's that perception where people are like, nah? Or also, can you mention how can we de-risk the startups?
Sure. So I actually don't think it's a perception barrier. In fact, no, first, quick disclaimer is that, so I'm a venture capital guy. A lot of my career I've been in VC and private equity. There is a difference between what makes a good business and what makes a good VC investment. Just because it's not a good VC investment does not mean it's not a good business. That's the disclaimer. You can have very profitable, very impactful, very meaningful, very successful, like financially successful businesses that are nevertheless not a great fit for a VC fund. That said, I think often the issue is that many of the businesses that we're talking about, a big part of their model is going to be moving a physical product from point A to point B. And that is really, really difficult to do at scale. Like, that's incredibly difficult. And so sometimes that is that's going to be what ends up being the issue, right? It doesn't stop it from being a good business, but it might mean that it's not a great fit for a VC. So in terms of de-risking, I think the first thing is to match the investor to your business. You can spend a lot of time chasing just fundamentally the wrong type of investor, and they're never going to be able to make it work, and you might start feeling disheartened about that, and it might not be clear that actually the issue is more like their incapacity to invest in you, rather than the actual potential of the business itself. But answering as kind of a VC PE guy, I think in terms of de-risking, I look at that in the model. I think there's a few things here. So, one example is to take things that already exist, figure out a more efficient way to do them, and capture some small part of that value, and basically be an enabler to an existing ecosystem, because there is one, right? There's a huge amount of secondhand clothing sales, that's circular economy. I already mentioned glass bottles. In terms of reuse, recycling, repurposing, all those things are already there. So if you can basically make that more efficient, there's a lot of value there to be captured, and that makes it very attractive to more commercial investors. I think another part of it as well is that many of the models that we've talked about, you basically, we call it the circular economy because the idea is that once you manufactured something, instead of consuming it and then disposing of it, you use it, process it, reuse it, process it, reuse it, process it, reuse it. And so the plays which allow you to reuse something multiple times have kind of almost by definition higher margins, because if you can sell the same item 5 times, you're going to make a lot more money than if you sell it once. So finding those kinds of models, a lot of that is really challenging because you have to work backwards almost the design stage, because most products are not really designed to be reused. They're designed to be thrown away so that you have to buy another one. But those kinds of models are just by their nature de-risked, and I think are more attractive for kind of institutional investors.
So big margins.
Yeah.
Big margins, yeah. Okay, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I felt like that was a very short session. But before we go, how many of us litter? If you litter, please raise your hands. Of course, no one's going to raise their hand, huh? Okay. So one of the biggest challenges that I've seen with African cities is littering, right? And I'm curious to know from our panelists, if they feel or think that it will come to a time when the culture of littering in Africa, of course it's not all African cities, but in those African cities that have a lot of litter, do you think that culture will change? Do you think we will adopt a culture of recycling where if I buy, like, let's say in my house I have a bottle of, I bought some soda, right? Can I keep it aside until I take it to an agent, because I'm seeing such solutions coming up, but the recycling part, do you think that is something that we will adopt? Do you see that happening in the next 5 to 10 years where, Nairobi city or the residents, it's going to be a very different city, a very different thing that we'll be talking about. So, yeah, as your closing remarks, and we can start with Christine. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So for me, waste is not just throwing away things. Just to answer your first question, it's usually deeply connected to culture, to behavior, to policy, to economics. So if we get it right with all these interconnected factors, then the littering also will be solved, but it cannot be a standalone. And in closing, I would say we don't have one specific model that works for all countries. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's up to us to identify and contextualize what works for maybe Kenya, for South Africa, for Nigeria, and then design solutions in that context.
Thank you.
Nairobi is a place full of litter, but I think I'm completely yes. But I think thinking about cleaning up a city and thinking about recycling also comes with economic development. I think there's a lot of people that picking up plastic bottles is sort of the last thing on their mind because they don't have healthcare. They are not sure if they can pay rent in a year. There's not job stability. There's a single mother, so I think there are still so many core problems, right, that we need to fix, and I'm sure all the many startups and VCTs are really busy with real problems. For a lot of people, litter is also a real problem, but I think it comes together with economic development. So in the next 10 years, I think there's going to be a shift.
Thank you. Daniel?
Sure, thanks. So I think that people respond to incentives and opportunity. I think anywhere in the world, if you went back 100 years, probably had a lot more litter than Nairobi does right now. And so for me, it's more a question of, okay, well, it's almost a byproduct of creating the incentives and the opportunity for people to, if you make it easy, convenient, and profitable for people to recycle their waste, they will do so. Plastic bottles being a great example. This is one of the few places, this not just Nairobi, but the region is one of the few places in the world where it is actually profitable to recycle plastic bottles, right? And there are people who will happily make a living from just clearing plastic bottles out of the street, and now you have an incentive for them to do that, and also it keeps the streets clean at the same time. So I think for me, it's just a question of incentives and opportunity over cultural attitudes or anything like that.
Okay. I think those were very positive answers. I'm hoping that in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see less litter, more recycling. And thank you very much. Please help me in thanking our panelists today. Please also give yourself a round of applause because you've been a very good audience. Thank you.